And we are recording and Solo Rant episode 596. And apparently I think you can I'm trying to do this thing where if you can like upload questions to Steven Crowder if you send in a video. So I'm just gonna start this podcast with that and then I'll splice it out. I'm not sure how you're supposed to do it, so I guess I'll try. Mr. Crowder, I think your show's hilarious. My question is well, one, will you come on my podcast? I'm not going to be a bum and invite myself onto yours. So will you come on to mine and discuss censorship with me? I was booted off of YouTube on August 29th, August 30th, 2021. Uh, I interviewed CIA veterans such as Claire Lopez about election fraud, and those are some of my initial strikes. I had on Roger Hodkinson from Cambridge Medical School, or excuse me, Oxford, Cambridge. I don't remember which one. Dr. Robert Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine. That got me a strike. And then I finally got booted for having on Dr. Peter McCullough, the most published cardiologist in world history, who has testified before the U.S. Senate and has declared that that big pharma is suppressing ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other alternative, generic, safe, billions of doses used, decades-long studied medications. I refuse to bend the knee. So yeah, would you come on my podcast to discuss censorship with me? A little about myself. I'm 31 years old. I got into medical school in 2013. I graduated the University of Georgia, magna cum laude. I published research in aquatic toxicology. I scored in the top 4 percentile on the MCAT, top 1 percentile on the PCAT, got accepted to the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, got accepted to the Lake Erie College of Medicine Pharmacy School, a satellite campus in Florida. Lost a sibling to suicide a couple months after I graduated, threw myself into a tailspin of several long years of drug use and weight gain, moved home in 2016 after becoming suicidal, spent several years teaching myself Photoshop. That didn't pan out. So I started a podcast after I almost died from an accidental prescription interaction. And I started this podcast above my parents' garage, and we are coming up on 2 years this December. This is episode 596, and it's making me a little bit of money. I have my own apartment now. I've upgraded to some better studio quality shit. But it's a one-man show. I don't have a scheduler. I don't have someone that gets me guests. I don't have someone that edits it. I don't have anyone that uploads it. It's 100% on me, and full disclosure, I wouldn't have it any other way. Some of the people I've interviewed include Charlie Duke, the 10th man to walk on the moon and one of 4 men alive in the world who have walked on the moon, Dr. Robert Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine, Dr. Ken Alabek, the first deputy director of the Soviet Union's bioweapon program, largest intelligence coup of the Cold War, defected to the United States in 1992. Howard Bloom, Michael Jackson's publicist, who's been on Joe Rogan. Mike Durant, the quote-unquote Black Hawk Down pilot. Ed Morales of the FBI firefight. I've had on Lawrence Burns, the one of the fathers of autonomous driving. And I've had on a lot more. And yeah, so I'd really, really, really like to have you on my podcast to talk about censorship, because I'm permanently banned from YouTube. I've lost about 99% of my viewership, and I'm on Rumble with a whopping 437 subscribers, and BitChute with an even more intimidating 201 subscribers, and on Odyssey with a real Leviathan subscriber count of, I think I'm at 50 subscribers. So I had someone ask today, why do you still do this? Your most recent episode has 12 views. To which my answer was, because I don't fucking quit. And so I think that's about as long as the video as I will upload to Crowder's website. And we'll just ride that directly into the podcast. Today is a solo rant. And unlike most solo rants where I kind of have a topic that I'm itching to talk about, I don't have one today. So I'm just kind of juggling as I go and not really sure how I'm going to do this. Mike Durant running for U.S. Senate. So that's cool from the state of Alabama. It's cool to see, I guess, military men stepping up more, just like Joe Kent. I wish Tim Kennedy would. I wish Jocko Willink would. Andy Stumpf, I think it would be cool. It seems like there's a lot of horse shit going on right now. Elections don't seem to be too genuine or authentic. And it kind of seems like everything's coming home. You always grow up hearing about everything. It kind of seems like it's on TV. And who knows? It might just be that I'm 31 and this is what every 31-year-old experiences and not necessarily anything to do with the times. But let's just take the possibility that it does have something to do with the times, because if it was just based on the progression of my aging and the evolving lenses through which I evolve it the evolving lenses through which I see reality, there would really be nothing to discuss. It would just be the aging process, which is, I'm not a biogerontologist, and I don't think any of you are either. But if it is something to do with specifically the United States in the year 2021, it seems like more of it's coming home, right? Whether it's supply line shortages, which I get, a pandemic, inflation, which I also understand Trump not published, printed what, 4 or 8 trillion of those dollars. He's not getting off scot-free. But if anything, it seems like maybe the plus side to things being so seemingly fucked right now is that more people are kind of getting involved, and you see guys like Mike Durant or Joe Kent running. Um, because it's a weird. I mean, it's almost like a cellular process, right? I mean, like molecular biology, cellular biology, whatever you call it, the former if you want to sound smarter, call it the latter if you be yourself. Cellular biology, molecular physiology, cellular biology. There are all these weird feedback systems, and that's kind of one thing that's kind of one of the weird things that I guess that was probably the biggest realization for me in cellular biology. It's a beautiful like last class you take for pre-med. Like you don't need it for the MCAT. It's everything else leads up to it: anatomy, physiology, organic chemistry, general chemistry, physics. It all leads up to cellular biology. So C Bio 3400. And it's this beautiful like season finale of pre-med, of everything you've been studying. And the oddest thing is like it's like you're finally down at the cellular level. Like you've learned how the whole body works, how organ systems work, how organs work, how tissues work, how subsets of cells work. You've learned about how atoms interact with each other. You've learned about physics. You've done the math classes or failed them like myself. And then it's finally, you got all the pieces, right? It's like playing a video game and you do all the side missions first. You upgrade all the weapons, get all the silencers and the scopes and the skills and the gear and the skins and everything. And then you go and do the campaign and you just kick the shit out of it, which is what I'm doing with Far Cry 6 right now, which I don't know how Far Cry 6 managed to go backwards. The ballistics are worse. You can't see the bullets go. You can't see the bullets. The bullets don't drop. There's no bullet drop. You can't see them arc. Far Cry 5, you shoot out into a lake. No matter how far you went, you could see them splash. You can't. You have to be like next to it's. Far Cry 6, I've said it before. Far Cry 6 should have been Just Cause 4, not Far Cry 6. If it was Just Cause 4, it would have replaced the bastard that is Just Cause 4. Point being, cellular biology. The weird thing is when you finally get down to the cellular level, is you realize like there's no one running it. Like the semantics of all these classes leading up to it is always like, the pancreas detects this, or the body understands that this is happening, so it does this. It raises the temperature. You have interleukins and interferons and what was it, prostaglandins and endogenous enkephalines and exogenous enkephalines and all this shit. And you always kind of you get this mindset of like, at least I who maybe no one else had this mindset and it's just me. It'd be like if someone's like, how you believe in Santa until you're 45, and then you find, and everyone's like, no. So this might just be every other pre-med kid out there might be like, the fuck are you talking about, you moron? But for me, it was like, how do I word this? It kind of felt like there was a top-down control, right? Like it's a communist system, but like it works, right? It's like this top-down Big Brother. controls and allocates resources from here to here, rest and digest, fight or flight, doing this and moving here and doing this and repairing this and polymerases and transcriptases and codons and exons, and you're going here and you're moving this here and apoptosis, and you're restricting blood flow from there, and you're releasing this here and you're going into this here. And it always, to me at least, felt like there was this top-down control. With cellular biology, you get into it and you realize that there is no control. It's all just like molecules bumping around. And through natural selection, the most probable thing happens, and the thing that is able to reproduce happens, right? That is natural selection. Probably the best thing that ever the best analogy I ever read that made me truly understand natural selection, because it's always like, how the fuck does nature know? And then actually this kind of goes into it, like cellular biology. Learning about natural selection, like I never bought into creationism. I do believe in God, but I never bought into, I look at God as more as like a pushed a domino and it's just watching. I was always like, well, how does something know to evolve? And then how does it do it? The best analogy I ever heard in college, again, probably something I should have heard earlier, is like a giraffe. Let's say there's like 100 giraffes, and for whatever reason, they all move into a new area and the trees are just like 6 inches higher. And one of the giraffes just happens to have a longer neck through whatever reason, genetic mutation, an injury. I don't know. Imagine like a comical, like it's like stretched out, like some Tom and Jerry shit. For whatever reason, one of them just has a longer neck. That one gets the food and no one else gets it. And so he gets it and eats it, and all the other ones will, one, get weaker and start to physically die, and two, he's the only one that can provide for the females. So he's able to, one, he is stronger, so he could physically just fuck up the other males. But two, if he does mate and has kids, he's the only one that can provide food. Whereas let's say the other ones manage to mate, but they can't provide food, the kids die off. And whereas the one with the long neck is having the ones and the kids grow up, there's no top-down control. It's just, now there's more of these ones. And so the next generation, there's like 4 of them with longer necks. And then they do it again and they all have kids because they can get food. And then they have longer necks. Then you go by 1,000 generations and, oh, this is when the giraffe neck extended this much during this, biologic era, whatever, like 100 million years or something. And you realize there was no top-down control. It's just kind of how it happened. Like a coin sorter when you're little and you dump coins into the thing, and there's like the slot for the quarter, the penny, the nickel, the dime. Granted, that's designed, so that's not really working, but it's kind of like that. It's like the things just go where they go, and that's what happens. That was just the most, scratch that whole coin sorter analogy. That was terrible. Shame on you, Tommy. That was truly some lowbrow. That was eating glue behind a dumpster retardation. That's fucking sticky fingers and a Capri Sun in your backpack, retard. But with cellular biology, that's what you kind of realized is, you're like, so when the islet of Langerhans detects increased glucose, so it releases insulin. And then you realize, no, well, what it really is like a higher glucose concentration means there's a greater disparity in concentrations. So it presses in more and it permeates the cell wall. And when all these glucose molecules come, they basically, to dumb it down, it's like they maybe land on more receptors, and the receptors are like keys, and they release, after a certain number are clicked, like more insulin releases. And you realize it's all just this domino, what is it? Rube Goldberg device. It's kind of just these weird, and you're like, oh, no one's watching it, or like no one's controlling it, right? It's kind of like the free market. It's like, well, how did, for instance, like I have a gun safe for the podcast. I'm in Maryland. How come I was able to get it at this Home Depot? Well, someone somewhere, it wasn't a top-down control. It was a company that went, hey, the amount of money we can make from selling this safe exceeds the amount of money it costs to start shipping them to a Home Depot in Maryland. So let's do it. And then when that doesn't work, it kind of atrophies, like Howard Bloom talking about in Global Brain, kind of, to he who hath will be given everything, and to he who he hath not, even what he doesn't have will be taken. Basically, how nature kind of just always provides for that which has and takes away from that which does not. It's all about pushing like this weird vein through the course that works, right? Like dumping water onto like a pile of rocks, like it finds its way to the bottom. And that's kind of what cellular biology was, is like you just realize like everything was but there was no like top down control. Like not one cell was like, hey, are we sending proteins to here? Hey, what are those polysaccharides doing? Or those proteoglycans and glycoproteins, proteoglyc. There's two of them. They had the same fucking name. I hated it. But it, like, nothing's controlling it. Now it gets different. But even then, it's like, well, is it different? Because, okay, well, what about when like I go to a doctor and a doctor's like, hey, you have this problem, you need to start taking this medication. Then there is top-down control, but we are made up of all of the cells that have no top-down control. It's just shit bouncing around. And it really is just, yet here we are. Like, here we are. And it does work. Like, I eat and I digest it. And it does, it's the weirdest thing that truly, like, the most complex, the most efficient, the most the power efficient, energy efficient, uh uh power projecting, self-replicating, survivability, exploratory system ever devised, life, which in some cases is human, who goes across all the continents, but not even just humans, including like sharks under the ocean or birds in the air. There's no like top down. It really is just, there's no one controlling physics, right? It's like the hydrophobic effect, right? Where things, resist water. And then you realize there is no such thing as hydrophobia. It's actually, they have more of an attraction to like particles or molecules than they do water. So they all band together. It's not that they hate water. It's just the illusion that there's hydrophobia. But the reality is they just stick more together, you know? It's like, it's like I went to a med school interview and I saw another kid with a bulldog shirt on. His name's Obi, he's a physician now. He's one of the smartest kids I've ever met. But we were both at Miami in, because I'm fucking like autistic and can remember these dates. On October 4th, 2013, we were both interviewing at University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, and like he was wearing like a bulldog shirt. Like I think I saw it under his collared shirt, and I went up to him. I was like, "Oh, you go to UGA?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." And we had, UGA is a huge school. We had never met, but we had taken obviously all the same courses, all the same teachers, and we knew some people. It's not that like I hated everyone else there, right? It was just like, oh, there's another guy with the bulldog shirt, so I went and sat next to him. You know, it's drop me into a subway in Moscow, and there's someone else talking English, and he's really trying hard with Russian. And then I see, and it's not that I hate all the other Russians. I'm like, oh, here's a fucking guy that talks, and we just kind of pair up. Now you could say there's the hydrophobic effect, dude. There's the Russophobic effect, but it's not that. It's just that we understood each other better. So there are all these things that happen that just, they're illusory, and there's really no one or nothing controlling it, right? Like planets coalescing was because of just accretion disks. All the early plant. I mean, even then, well, let's take a step back. How did the stars form? Well, that was like another thing I remember learning in physics, was like I always just viewed stars and planets differently. I was like, there's the sun, and it's the hot ball of gas, and it's the light switch, and it provides the heat. Okay. And then there's the planet, and that's where there are clouds and turtles and shit. It's a true astonishment that I got into medical school. But, or as my little brother says, Tom, I don't respect you more or think more highly of you because you got into medical school. Instead, I have less respect for the field of medicine, knowing that you got in there. Shout out, little brother, you fucking douche. But he's not littler than me. He's taller than me. He's a tall, handsome motherfucker with a beautiful fiance and an awesome dog. And fuck you. I love you, but fuck you. But then you learn like what stars really are, and you're like, stars are just bigger planets, and they got so big that the amount of mass coalescing onto itself couldn't support it. It's building a skyscraper so tall that it collapses on itself. And so you find a pile of rubble around a bunch of other skyscrapers, and you go, those are skyscrapers, and here's a pile of rubble. No, it's the same thing. This is just what happens when you do that ad infinitum, and it gets bigger and it collapses under its own weight. So like a star was just it, at some point probably was just this sort of kind of rocky molten thing, but it got so big that it compressed itself and it underwent nuclear fusion. So big that the powers of attraction were overcome, or powers of attraction were overcame the powers of repulsion. And it wasn't even then, is that an illusion? Are they really, is it the power of attraction, or was it that everything was so fucking heavy that they're all squished together? And it'd be like, this is a bit of an odd analogy, but it'd be like if like, you know how like, I think it's like special forces or even like camping, like if you find yourself in a dire situation and like hypothermia gets set in, like you're supposed to strip down and sort of spoon each other. Like if there's like 5 of you, you're supposed to all spoon, because it's you minimize the amount of surface heat and you're and thus collecting your body heat. But it'd be like if so many of us were spooning that the weight started to compress us, and you start to be forced into any which way that there was unused space, and eventually that would lead to dicks and asses intercourse. And even though me and all my friends are heterosexual, eventually with enough people and enough weight, your homophobia would be overcome. And then is it actually overcome by heterosexual heterosexuality would be surpassed by or vice, you get what I'm saying? And then you would say that, well, is that really even happening? Because no, it's actually just the forces pushing down on it. So it's not even really that the forces of attraction overtake the forces of repulsion. It's just that they're pushed so far together that when you have an airline bag and you're packing it full of shit and you're like, I need like friends, and you're stepping on it and you're like, come on, we just got to get all of it out, right? It's like dad, when we're putting together a duffel bag to go up to the camp when we're little, and so we're all pushing on it, and then you push it together, and then it's like 2 people or 1 person on each side are pushing the duffel bag together, and then the guy in the center grabs the clip and goes, okay, I got it. And you can let go, and it goes taut, but it stays. That clip could never reach each other because the power of all the clothes and shit pushing out overcome the power of the clip. But once you get it all together close enough to where you can clip, then you can let go, and that clip actually holds on to everything that was pushing out. So it's this weird sort of like physical, and not the sense of just like the body, I mean in the sense of physics, right? Biology, biological, chemistry, chemical, physics, physical. It's like this physical fake it till you make it type thing. And so like with stars, it's just that they get pushed together so much that eventually the power of fusion overcomes the power of repulsion, right? It's the early atomic bomb, the first atomic bomb, Trinity, at Alamogordo, New Mexico at 5:45 in the morning on July 16th, 1945. That was fission, right? Same with Little Boy and Fat Man over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Or was Fat Man? I think Fat Man was Hiroshima. Little Boy was Nagasaki. I think Fat Man was Nagasaki. Little Boy was Hiroshima. August 6th, 1945. August 9th, 1945. I was born on August 7th, 1945. A little upset at my mom that she couldn't have pushed me out a day earlier or a couple days later. That would have been a cool birthday to have. Let's call it what it is. But to explain that, for some future asshole taking this out of context, my dad's dad was going to be part of the mainland invasion of Japan, and he wasn't some special officer. He was cannon fodder. He was, I think, 18. Cannon fodder. Would have been absolutely ripped apart by machine guns, hands down, no questions. Not being negative, it just would have happened. And I wouldn't be here. So it's okay for me to support the dropping of the atomic bomb. Fuck you. But those bombs were fission, which is you split atoms and the cascading effect of actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I realize I probably don't understand it as well as I should. Right? If I truly understood it, I should be able to explain it very well. That's how I can explain other things, is because I understand them well, and so I can make simple everyday analogies. Right? I have yet, side note, I have yet to have someone explain to me Bitcoin or blockchain in a dumbed down version. I've had people say, so it's this, and then, when you do this, and I'm not saying they don't know what they're talking about, but I've had people explain like NFTs to me, and they're like, it's kind of weird, but it's like when this, and no. You should be able to explain it to a 5-year-old. What's the point of doing podcasts every day, even when they're not necessarily getting a lot of views? Well, it's like if you were to get on a skateboard or a scooter or whatever and slide down. If it's snowing outside and it's a snow day and you get on a sled at the top of a hill and you slide down it, versus if you just walked down the snowy hill, if you took a stick and just poked a hole in the ground and then moved it forward half an inch and poked a hole in the ground, and then not even half an inch, a quarter of an inch, to where not just where you perforated the hill all the way down, but you poked a hole and then you poked another hole so close that they were somewhat overlapping. So the holes overlap. So it then turned into like an oval and then a longer oval. And then you poked all the way down the hill and made a long line that would take your entire day, if not more. Versus if you get on a sled and fly down the hill and just put a stick in the snow next to you as you're flying down the hill, it drags the whole thing out like that. They're easier. They're right. There's two ways to skin a cat. I do the podcast every day, and although it may seem like I'm poking a hole, over time I'm sledding down the hill of time, the 4-dimensional hill of time, and I'm pulling a long streak in it, and that is building up the library of my podcasts. Now, where does it go when I get to the bottom? I haven't figured that out yet. But there are ways you should be able to explain things simply, right? Like natural selection, cellular biology, proteins bumping around with a giraffe, right? So, or even simpler terms, what's a good app, right? Fucking, you'd say, how come people download the Instagram app as opposed to the web browser app? Well, you use the web browser, you're accidentally highlighting shit, and it's copy and search and look up and paste, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And then you get an app and it's just nice clean buttons with a strong and a sexy smooth user interface, UI, what was it, UIX, user interface / user experience, and it's got things, and you don't need to worry about highlighting it or accidentally opening a new tab, and it's this smooth, fluid thing. So more people use it and less people use the browser, and then more people share links within the app that you can't open on the browser. Would you like to open in the Instagram app? More and more people use that, less and less people use that, and then the browser stops getting updates because they want to put their resources towards the things that are being used. So more people get the app, and now you have 50 million app downloads, or 100 million, or whatever, probably in the billions now. I've never had anyone explain NFTs, cryptocurrency, or blockchain to me in a way that is broken down like that. Back to the fission bombs, I realize I don't understand fission as well as I should. Point is fission is splitting apart, fusion is joined. All that was not important. Back to the stars. It collapses down to where it does just create a star. And then one of the byproducts of that is energy escaping in the form of light. Maybe it escapes as a shockwave, right? That's acoustic energy. Maybe it escapes as a rumble, right? And that's kind of acoustic, right? Because it's physically going off. Maybe it comes across as heat, right? Heat waste energy. You can't really overcome it. Closest you can get is a Carnot engine, Carnot, which is I think is 49%, but you can't get anywhere close to that with anything practical. One of the byproducts is light. And so what beforehand was these different things, there is a sun and it releases the light and the heat, and then there's the planet with the clouds and the turtles. You actually start to realize, right, there are all the skyscrapers and there's the pile of rubble. You actually start to realize they're all the same thing. They're just on different spectrums, right? The butterfly and the caterpillar, the tadpole. You go, oh, they're not separate. They're the same thing, right? COVID early on is an immune response, and then later on is an autoimmune. I don't know it well enough, so I can't explain it like a simple analogy. So, like it would be, I don't know this well enough, but I imagine it would be something like cancer, where early on it might be stomach pain, but then it spreads to other organs. So you need to have sort of a very strong, and we gotta start hitting it now with chemo, and then you lose your hair, and without hair, so you're kind of fucking feeling depressed or something, or maybe you're wearing a hat all the time, so now you got a weird tan line. Where'd the tan line come from? Well, it started with cancer, but now it's progressed to a tan line, so it may look different, but it's all in the same spectrum. So with physics, it was like, oh, these are, oh, you go, oh, the sun and the planets, you go, oh, this is just the same thing. It's just on a different, and you start to view it differently, not as these distinct separate things, but rather things on a spectrum. It happens again with the states of matter, right? Air and water. You go, oh, well, they I don't know why I just that layer, there's the ocean, there's the sky. That this one's air and this one's the ocean, and you just look at them differently. There's this one is where I see the setting sun and the clouds, and under there is that's where the turtles and the fucking sharks and the Titanic are. You just there's the ocean and there's the whatever. You just let it go. But then you start to realize, really, they're the same thing. One is just denser, kind of like the stars collapsing. There is a greater concentration here held down by gravity, and so we get liquid. And then you realize, you learn in physics that water and air behave, I want to say the exact same, but I'm sure there's some exceptions, but they're both identified as fluids. It's just fluid dynamics. That's what it is. Now, because they're denser, they have different things. Like you could use an airplane in the sky versus underwater. You don't really need that system, right? You have subs and kind of the same thing. Then you take an airplane into space, and all of a sudden, wing surfaces don't matter. You need what are they? Vernier thrusters. Put a 747 into space, the wings don't matter anymore. You need the little rockets to push it around. Versus you come back down into the atmosphere, little rockets aren't going to help so much as a strong wing surfaces. And then it kind of, the inverse happens. You go back down into the ocean. It's all about propellers on certain parts, just pushing it. Whoever's listening to this has got to think that I've just completely gone, I don't care. I like solo rants. I am trying to do them once a week now. It's a goal of mine that I want to start doing. Because I think it would be interesting. Like at the beginning of the solo rant, I said, like, I didn't have, you can tell it's a good one when my face starts to get flushed. I said earlier that I didn't necessarily have a topic to talk about, so I'd only do them when I wanted to. But it kind of makes me think of like what David Goggins says. He was like, motivation doesn't last long. Like you can't bank on motivation. Motivation's like lighter fluid. It's a great thing to start the fire, but you need to have the consistency of like chopping logs and throwing it on the fire, even when you don't want to. Even when the wood is wet, you still got to do it. That's what keeps the fire going. Or as Mark Manson said in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, don't wait for motivation to start working. Start working and the motivation will come. And I learned that with Photoshop. When I didn't know what I wanted to make, I'd be like, well, I guess I got to wait for inspiration. And then I'd realize, no, you just got to start piecing shit together, start throwing stuff on the iPad. And sometimes you do it for like a couple of weeks and nothing happens. But then one day you're adding this here and you're adding this there. And oh, hold on, what if I did this? And then you accidentally use like an overlay effect and you get some cool color and you're like, oh, that's neat. That kind of reminds me of, whatever. You're like, oh, and then the Bob Lazar work I did, Roger loves that shirt, and I have that hoodie and those pants. But it's one of my, if not my favorite thing I've made, is my Bob Lazar blueprint artwork. That originally started as I did a cutout of J, and I can find it on my photo library. I could walk you through it. It started as a cutout of JFK, and there was this picture with JFK sitting next to LeMay, and they both had aviators on. And I had made a piece, by piece I mean shitty Photoshop. All right, that's such a douche word. I made a piece. This is an original Carrigan. No, I made this thing where it was just JFK and he had the glasses, and then the reflection I put two like flying saucers, and it was like the real reason he was assassinated is because he knew, right? And so that was like years prior, and then I kind of went back to that one day because I couldn't think of anything to make, so I started doing that, and I put like reflections of like, and I went through all these different styles, and I was like, all right, and then I was like, maybe I need to do like a dual assassination, and so I had like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but I had JFK and Marilyn Monroe back to back, and then like on JFK it was like bloody, and on her side there was like sleeping pills, and I wanted to make it like a snowboard type design, and I was like, I'm still just not feeling it, right? And it's like when you're jerking off and you're like watching porn and you're like, that's sure, but like it's not the one I want. I don't know what I want, but I know when I'll see it. I didn't quite feel it. And then I remember I was like, well, let's throw Lazar in there. Let's throw Bob Lazar. So I found like a cool like picture of him and I turned it into like a vector, which is like kind of that like smooth, uh kind of looks like minimalist art. And then I found one of like an alien gray. Someone made this like a really cool deviant art image of like an alien with the big eyes and the little nose and the little mouth. I've got fucking ingrown hair in my nose. It hurts like shit. And I took those and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I, for whatever reason, I wanted to try something new. And I remember I overlaid it onto this like high res image of like a, not quite, I don't think burlap's the right word, but maybe it is. Kind of like a heavy fabric. Maybe burlap is the right word. Um, uh, like a scarecrow mask almost. That kind of like dense. It almost looks like straw. I put it onto like that material, and I made it look almost like a wanted poster from like the Wild West. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I started to do that, and I started to get this feeling of like, oh, I something's tugging me in this direction. I don't know what it is, but and this whole thing this is different than when I would have these kind of these like lightning strikes of inspiration for like a work, and I knew exactly what I wanted it to be, and like that was like Mike Tyson punching where his fist is a freight train, or the heroin needle and the bubbles inside of it are like the social media icons, right? Real edgy shit. This is an example of where so those what I'm just said about those, the Mike Tyson one. I did one where Elon Musk is smoking the blunt on Rogan, but instead of the blunt, it's the Falcon Heavy rocket, and it's like blowing off like smoke and it's taking off. Those are ones that I saw in my mind and just kind of had like a crack of inspiration. Like I knew I wanted to make it. Like last night I made I was walking back from the gym and it just popped into my head. Uh Dr. Robert Malone, inventor of the mRNA vaccine, and Post Malone. And just like right there, it was like Dr. Post Malone. And I saw it in my head. And so I sat down last night and for like 30 minutes made this on my iPhone. And it's just Dr. Malone with Post Malone's tats and his hands, and he's holding up the peace sign. With this other work, the Lazar work, was one of those examples where I didn't know what I wanted to make. But it's like, how do I say this? It'd be like if you were on a mountain and you were trying to get to a lower altitude. because you just knew, like, instinctively, you're like, people don't live up here, and I'm trying to get back to civilization, and I don't know where the people are, I don't know where the roads are, but I imagine there will probably be more people if I get down off the mountain. And so, like, the JFK Marilyn Monroe work would be like, I had an idea of what I should be doing. I had this image in my mind of what should be, not what is. And so that would be like walking horizontally on the mountain, right? Like me getting into medical school. Like I had this idea of like, I need to have the white coat and the nice car and the country club, and I'll get married and have the kids, and then I'll be happy. That was all constructed in my mind of what should be versus what actually makes me happy. And what actually made me happy was eight eight long years of sort of self-discovery. First, the 2 years were just miserable drugs and weight gain, followed by years of Photoshop and then the podcast. And now I'm getting closer and closer to it. So you're on the side of the mountain, and the Marilyn Monroe JFK work is like, I know there's like a cabin somewhere on this mountain, so let's just stay horizontal. And you're kind of walking, you can imagine like one foot is hitting up higher and the other foot slipping down lower. You're walking on the side of the mountain. I quote unquote knew where I should be going. I had this idea of where I should be going versus finally your gut kicks in and goes, look, I don't know where the road is and I don't know where the trail is. And I can't even find like a creek, but I can just with my eyes and with, the molecules inside of my ear, I can feel just, balance that way is down, right? Doesn't anyone knows that? An animal knows that. An ant knows that. It's that way's down. Let's at least get down to a lower altitude where it's not as cold, and at least we won't die from exposure, or we won't die as quickly. So you start walking down, and maybe you find a path, but you're still just going down, down, down until finally kind of gets a little warmer. And then you might see someone else walking around. You can be like, hey, I got fucking stuck on this mountain. Like I need whatever medical attention. That's what finding these Photoshop works was like. You would know, you would see it in your head instantly. And that was like seeing a cabin on the mountain and going, we need to get to that light now before nightfall and we die from exposure. And those are easy because you see it and it's a freebie. You just go, there it is. Now you just got to do it. Right. You see the cabin and it's 2 miles away on the hillside, and you see the smoke from the fire and the lights on inside. You go, that's where it is. We got to travel from here to there. It's going to be cold. Our feet are going to get wet, but that's where we got to go. And so it's easy in the sense that you know what you have to do. You just have to now do it, right? Versus the things that you don't know. You're like, I don't know where it is, and we need to make the hard decision to realize that we might find the cabin up here, but if we go the wrong way, we're dead. Versus let's go down the mountain and we might die, but as opposed to dying tonight, if we don't find the cabin, we might die in 2 days because we can get to where there's less snow and less wild animals or something, right? So you make that hard decision to hedge your bet and you start going down the mountain. That's what these Photoshop works were like, is you kind of had this feeling of, as opposed to like the Dr. Post Malone thing where you just see it in your head and you're like, well, now I just have to sit down and do it real quick. Like I know what it is. I just have to do it. Right. That was, you knew where the treasure was and you just start digging. You go, there it is. There's the thing. And we're going to go down there and get it. Versus like the other works were maybe more like a metal detector where you're like, it's somewhere right around here, right? It's the stethoscope up to the side of the gun safe. And you're like, it's getting a little tense there. Click, there it is, right? So I had these things on this like digital burlap sack, and I was like, I like that. Something's, something like, feel these little kind of tentacles around me. I'm like, this is downhill on the mountain. I'm like, okay, let's start going. Maybe we'll come up to a cliff and we'll have to go, fuck, we got to find another way down. But let's go that way. And and I was like, well, I want some like technology on the image, right? I want maybe like a picture of the UFO. And so I got like a picture of the UFO, and I did the same thing. I kind of overlaid it onto the burlap sack, like the Wild West Wanted poster, and it didn't quite look like the way I wanted it. And I was like, no, that's not it. And because it was too simple. You couldn't tell it was a UFO. It was a side angle. It was a detailed side angle. That's the thing with vectorizing images. Let me pull up an example of a vector. Um, Vectorizing images is like you really are just making like the most simple version of an image. An example would be like the stick figures on the bathroom, right? Like male and female. Like those are like super simplistic vectors, right? Where it's just like a skirt. Versus like here for everyone watching, here is an image of Tupac, right? A vector is this, where it's just super simplistic. But if there's enough, and this is the important part, if there's enough detail in the image, the vector will be recognizable, right? Now, if I made a vector of me, you might recognize it if you watch the podcast. If I made a vector of any one of your friends, you might not recognize it. Or that was a really fucking egotistical thing to say. Vice versa. You might not recognize me, but if I showed you a vector of your mom, you would probably recognize that as your mom, right? You know, who's that? Oh, got to hold it closer to the camera. That's Biggie Smalls, right? You know, who's that? That's Eminem. Like these are things you can look at, right? Ben Franklin, Randy Marsh, Frankenstein, uh, Snoop Dogg. So Mike Myers. So the thing with vectors is the more complex, like higher resolution the image, the more recognizable the vector becomes. Now, again, I wouldn't recognize a vector of like your mom, but you might look at it and go, "Oh, that's mom," or that's my first dog. Like you might recognize that. So I don't recognizable might not be the best. Well, kind of is, but it's high resolution. Now, the lower resolution you can get a low resolution image of a very recognizable person. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Brad Pitt, whatever. But because the vector simplifies things so much, if you take an already simplified image, though perhaps of a recognizable figure, the vectorized image might not be recognizable. And I've had that happen before. I wanted to do one of like Eisenhower, and I was using like a low resolution image, and like you could not tell it was Eisenhower. Okay, maybe not everyone recognizes Eisenhower. With Post Malone, with Justin Bieber, with fucking Miley Cyrus, like you don't necessarily. It doesn't matter how recognizable they are. The resolution was low, and the vector works on that. And so, even with a recognizable person, like Barack Obama, you take a low enough resolution image, the vector it will not be recognizable. So, the point is, with the vectors, back to the burlap sack, was like the UFO. Like Bob Lazar, well, especially for all the conspiracy heads like me, you knew beforehand, but especially after Rogan and Jeremy Corbell's movie, recognized Lazar, and it was also a high resolution image. Perfect. An alien gray. It's kind of that archaic. I mean, like the skull and crossbones is like, don't go in there, right? It's the choking sign, the male and the female in the bathroom sign, green go, red stop, kind of these ground into our mass psyche. We all kind of recognize the gray alien, right? Big eyes, little nose, little mouth. The thing with the UFO was it wasn't a super high resolution image, or no, excuse me, it was, but it was so simplistic because that's what the UFO was. It's just this super smooth, almost no edges, silver disc from the side. You couldn't tell it was a UFO. I mean, you wouldn't have known it was anything. Like you might have just thought it was an oval. You might have thought it was me just like putting an underline. You might have thought it was like an underline type thing for like the images. Like here's the image and there's like a line under it for some sort of like foundation. And I was like, well, fuck. There's a purpose to everything I'm doing. I don't mean that with creating the Photoshop. I mean with what I'm explaining right now. There's a purpose to it. I was like, that didn't work. So I started getting other images. So I got like a top down image of the UFO. And there's these really cool, this guy made these these digital renderings of what Lazar described. And they're on Imgur. You could just search them, Bob Lazar UFO Imgur. It's these like super reflective, like super buffed out chrome simple discs, and they're like in Nevada, right? And you're like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, that's what it would look like. But it really wasn't translating to the vector very effectively. And I was like, no, like I'm still not on board with that 100%. So I got like a top down view of it. And again, super cool. It's reflective. So it's like reflecting the clouds. And you can see like the military base under it. And you're like, fuck yeah, UFOs. But vectorized, the top down view just turned into a circle. It's just a circle. Like as you do a vector of Tupac, do a vector of me, you're not going to get every freckle. Like you're going to get very basic kind of like positioning of nose, like cheekbones. You might get like this line of the necklace and like the microphone. It's very simplistic. And I was like, well, fuck, that's not working either. So what I was like, well, I just need images of like technology. Like that's all I need. I just want images of technology. And I really gotta pee. Like really gotta pee. But I kind of want to keep talking about this. I gotta pee. I'm sorry, everybody. I'll be back. I'll try to make it quick. All right, we're back. I don't know if you can hear me. Also, so kind of side note, when people ask like, why don't you just edit those out? There is a limit to file size on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. And because I need to streamline these things, think back to the sled going down the hill with the stick, and I need to streamline these things. I have to just kind of do like the lowest common denominator. YouTube, there was no limit, or the limit was so high it didn't matter. And so I would screen record, and when I screen record, I would just go into iMovie and I would edit at the bathroom breaks. With Zoom, a Zoom file is much smaller than a screen recording file. It's more efficient, it's lower quality, but it's also just a lot more efficient. And then so those two things added together, more efficient and lower quality, leads to a greatly reduced file size. I found that it's about 1/10 to 1/15 the size of the file for screen recording. So a 3 GB video, even I actually no, I would say less than a tenth. I would say probably closer to like 100th. Actually, yeah, no, probably closer to like 100th. So a 30 GB file from an hour-long podcast screen recorded, it's gonna come out to about 300 megabytes on Zoom. But the catch is if you go to iMovie and edit that Zoom file, I'm too stupid to go deeper. Something happens where even if you shorten it, which is what editing is, right? You're cutting out stuff. Even if you shorten it, there's something that happens to where it's almost like a tamper-proof bag. You like fuck it up, and the video comes out fine, but the file size jacks up to like 10 times the size. So the whole value of the Zoom file is that it's so tiny. If you tweak it, it gets huge. And when I'm using these little files to upload onto Odyssey, BitChute, and Rumble, I can't like stop and start recording. Even if you do that, because you can stop and start recording during Zoom, you still have two separate video files. You can't upload more than one file. So you have to stitch them together. You stitch them together, the same thing happens. So there's this weird fucking synergistic effect, which didn't matter when I was on YouTube because I would just edit it out and it didn't matter. But now that I'm limited to file sizes, it does matter. So like I had on Hatfill a couple like last week. And we took bathroom breaks and he asked me, he was like, could you edit out the bathroom break? And I was like, yeah, sure. But to do that, I then had to go in and like do a screen recording. And then the only way to get that iMovie file small enough to upload to BitChute, I had to move it from 4K to like 540p. And so now it looked like a piece of shit, but I got it to where it was like sub 3 GB so I could upload it. So that's why I don't uh edit out bathroom breaks, is really because I'm banned from YouTube. It's a very long, you know. So like, what caused Apollo 13? Well, there's this guy named Gavril Princip, and he shot someone, and then fast forward, and it's so like the gas went out the left side, and we realized we couldn't, rendezvous with the LEM, so we had to come back to Earth, and that's what, right? And it's this convoluted, like, but yes, in short, because I got banned from YouTube, I don't edit out bathroom breaks. But that's really what it is. This is just so sorry about that. Not really, but that's what it is. I've yet to explain that in 596 episodes. I don't know why I just didn't explain it earlier. It made things easier for everybody. But anyway, so back to like the burlap sack shit. Jesus Christ in heaven. What kind of drugs you doing, bro? I wish I could say I was like Hunter S. Thompson, but I'm actually taking a thing for that ingrown hair to reduce the pimple size so it doesn't hurt as much. But we'll pretend it's acid. So the burlap sack thing. So I wanted to find like just images of technology. And there's a great kind of thing about Photoshop, is that it's like props in a movie. Like it doesn't have to be a real missile with a functioning guidance system that's billions of dollars. You can just get like a cheap 3D printed thing and have someone paint it so it looks the same, right? You don't need to actually be fighting on top of the Empire State Building. You just need to invest in a green screen and like some processing power, and you can get it at a fraction of the cost. You don't need a $50,000 sniper rifle in a movie. You can just get a plastic replica, but just add in the sounds of metal, and there you go. It's all about the stage. It's all about the show, right? It's what you see head on, right? Like a constellation. A constellation isn't actually like fucking a thing up in the sky. It's everything is so far apart, but it's the angle you're viewing it at. It appears to be an image. So a cool thing about Photoshop is where like the focus of this work was going to be Lazar's face and the face of a gray alien, and the other things were they're going to provide periphery, again, like backgrounds, a missile silo in a movie. Like no one's really looking closely to see that it's styrofoam and not in fact a multi-million-dollar Atlas missile. But you don't want to just go, well, I can't get an Atlas missile, so let's do nothing. You do the styrofoam thing, and it's just enough that it kind of fills in the periphery to where like your mind it helps suspend disbelief, right? Okay, we're in a movie, we're in a nuclear bunker, we're in a nuclear silo, whatever. With Photoshop, it's when you're creating it, you look at it hyper detailed, right? It's like right now you see the image of me, and it's the microphone and the camera and the lights working. Like it doesn't matter that I have on like old sweatpants. It doesn't take away. I have a clean shirt on and I shaved and I fucking put my hair over and I turn the lights on and I brush my teeth. you don't need to see the fact that I have like two mismatched socks on, because that's not what's in the square of your mind's eye watching this or listening to this, right? And I guess if you were listening to it, then the image wouldn't even matter, right? None of it would matter. So it's all about like what's being perceived. Now, me, the creator, I might get hyper focused on that cut on my nose, or that acne on my chin, or the gap between my teeth, or how my front right tooth is chipped, right? Or um like a scab over here, or how you can see part of the table back here, it's not perfectly flush with the flag. But we have to remember is that I'm seeing it because I'm creating it, and so my mind's focused on it, right? It's like when you were embarrassed to wear like a certain pair of, school. I went to a private school, so like uniform pants, you're like, oh, I hate this pair, these are a little tighter. No one else notices. And if you ask your friends, you're like, they're like, what are you fucking talking about? you know I'll be like, does this pimple look bad? And to me, it's, I notice it because it's me. Whereas someone else might be like, they're so caught up in their own shit, they look at you and they're like, huh, yeah, whatever. That's kind of like what Photoshop is you have to go, okay, you know I'm not making like detailed schematic drawings for Boeing to where they are actually going to look at it, because this is going to lead to a functional nuclear missile. It's more of the movie prop background. So I finally realized, I was, because I was getting caught up on it, and I was like, I need a UFO image, I need this silver disc. And then finally I was like, why? The whole focus is Bob Lazar and the alien. Why do I need this? So I went in, I was like, well, why don't I just get like pictures of anything, just anything that's just kind of right. It's a right. It's the hacker. It's the hacker archetype in the movie, right? You don't actually need someone from the NSA going, no, that's not how you breach the firewall. It's all about parallel computing. You've got to do brute force, right? It's, the Diffie-Hellman, one-time pad encryption. You don't need that. Someone like Roger might point it out and go bullshit, but for all of us other knuckle draggers, all you need is the guy with the fucking, he's got the hoodie on, and he's got like skater shoes on, and he's just typing. I don't want to do it on the actual keyboard because I'll fuck up the podcast. But he's just typing, right? And the images are on the screen. And you're like, we're into the mainframe. There it is. Hackerman 9000. We're in. Bought you some time. That's why they pay me what they pay me. Jackson, you son of a bitch. It's that shit, but it doesn't actually matter. I was like, well, it doesn't. I just need to get like, I just need to get like a technological image. So like I went on and I found like a detailed cutaway of like a turbofan, like the fan inside of a jet engine. But because it was very detailed, I could, what? If you're listening, then you'll know the answer. I could make a vector of it. And the vector came out very well. You can do, and that's like a cool thing about vectors. If you do a vector of a like a draft, like an architect or a draftsman's like sketch, it comes out almost identical because it's just simplistic, right? It's all right angles and stuff. So it sounds like someone describing the internet. The internet is a series of tubes. Tommy, what was the turbofan, right? Listen, man, listen. It's right angles and stuff, right? It's the turtle and the clouds on Earth. Like, let's not get into the woods here. So I went and got just like this cutaway of a turbofan. I just vectorized it, and I was like, oh, there we go. And that overlaid onto the burlap even better. And so there's another thing I didn't go into earlier with like, one, turning something into a vector. It already has to be very recognizable, and it has to be high resolution. When you then want to take that vector and like put it on something else, I want to superimpose it as a tattoo on someone, or I want to make it look like a reflection in a water bottle. You're now going through like another watering down, if you will, of the image, right? So if you just wanted to make a vector of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, or of George Washington, or of fucking Katy Perry, right? Or of the Manhattan skyline, you could get a low resolution image of that, and you could superimpose it onto something, and you could go multiple like Inception levels in, and you'd still be recognized by a peace sign. right? So again, the Lazar and the alien were recognizable enough that even when turned to vectors and even when superimposed on this like burlap sack, where if they weren't working out, maybe you just wouldn't vectorize them and you would just put them on the burlap sack. But the point is it was working, right? Something like a crucifix or the American flag. You can vectorize them, you could put them in different filters, and you could superimpose it onto a pile of gravel. You'd probably still recognize it, right? Like the words help. You can either write help on a high resolution screen or you can spell it out with rocks on an island and someone in a plane sees it. These very kind of simple things get through. So not only did the vector of the UFO not really work, even if it did work, it probably wouldn't have come out well in the burlap. So I made the vector of like the turbofan, and I was like, oh, that looks cool, and I was like, oh, I want some more, I want some, and then I start, and you have these realizations when you're making it. You're like, I am looking at it with a hyper inspective eye because I'm making it. You have to look at it as how other people see it. Don't get lost, don't lose the forest for the trees. Don't get too caught up in it, right? It's Don't turn down the Super Bowl halftime show offer because you haven't worked out your newest album yet. Like, fucking just take it and go. So I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, all right, all right. I don't need it to be super UFO based. I was like, okay, kind of think Hacker Man, right? You don't need to actually be showing like NSA software on the screen. You can just take like a screenshot from the Matrix and just show the numbers falling. Hacker Man, right? It doesn't matter. It's all about the show. It's all about the appearance, the movie prop. And so I was like, oh, I just need like detailed images of anything. And so like I found like a cross section of like a cross section of like a flower, but it was so, it's just nature. It was so like weird and like structural that I think I took one of like a slice of like some sort of like, it might have been like a flower, but like a microscopic slice, and you could see all the cells. And like I vectorized that, and then it kind of looked like a silicon, like a motherboard, right? And stuff like that, to where it didn't matter, right? The cutaway of the turbofan from a 1970s commercial airliner. You take the hyper detailed schematic of it, you vectorize it, and then it's just like, well, here are all the lines in the fan, and you can just imagine, right? And then it's evoked by Lazar, alien, UFO. And you can kind of start to like smudge the edges of reality. You can really start cutting corners. Um, so then I got like a cutaway of like I think I actually went in and got like an image from like Marvel of like Tony Stark's like the arc reactor in his chest. It was like a cutaway of that. And I took that, I found like a high resolution image of it, like vectorized it, and then it was just it's just detail, right? It's just like I think I did another one of like a side view of a particle accelerator, right? I mean, really, you could go in and just find like the wiring from a 1950 Ford, but if you like framed it in the right way, it just looks super complex. And that's what I was going for. Was just think again, Hackerman 9000. Just have the matrix numbers following, and that evokes the, okay, this is the Hackerman, right? You don't need to you don't need to show an actual saint. You can just show like a guy with like the sun behind him, and you can airbrush his skin and put a halo. You're like, good guy. And then you kind of see the guy in the corner with like bags under his eyes and like maybe he's just a fucking single dad who's working his hardest, but there's a recession because we outsourced all the jobs. The reality is, though, it evokes evil bad man, right? Think Home Alone, the old guy with the eyes just staring at you. You think Psycho. Reality is just a friendly old guy. So I was going in and doing that, and so I was just finding all these old like engineering like drawings from like, I mean, literally like the 60s and 70s from like GE, and I was vectorizing all of them, and I was like, oh, this is perfect, this is perfect. And I realized, I was like, I found one, and it was like a blueprint of like They're called submarine or iceberg homes. They're these homes in London, kind of like Manhattan, to where, or any populated area where you densely populated area. So like where they couldn't go up any higher because of building codes, and they couldn't go out because just property limits. But there was no like existing code to like underneath. So they would take these houses, and let's just imagine you have a square and the house is like a little square in the center of it. What these people were doing, and these are people with hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. What they were doing was is they were having um they were hiring these firms, and these firms would go in and they would dig out the footprint of the property. So imagine just like your house wherever you grew up in, right? There's somewhat of a lawn and there's somewhat of a backyard and on the sides, right? Your basement is probably the footprint, if not something a little smaller than like the footprint of like the first floor of your house. What these super rich people are doing is they were taking the footprint of their property and turning that whole thing into a basement. And not only that, they were doing multiple floors of that. So they were taking these homes of already nothing to scoff at, these 10, 20,000 square foot homes. But, and I shit you not, they were turning them into like 200,000 square foot homes. They were turning these things into, if you would just put beds in them, you could have turned like a 5-bed, 5-bath home into like legitimately like a 50-bed, 50-bath home. But they weren't doing that. They were putting in, and I'm not some Marxist shit, I'm all for it. They're putting in like pools and shooting ranges and garages and movie theaters and bowling alleys and all that shit. But I found like a cool image of one, and it was just blueprints from it, right? And like the actual blueprint with like, again, the white drawing on like the blue background, and there's like a very slight grid. And I was like, oh, that's fucking cool. And then I just had this like mental shot of, oh, that is what this Bob Lazar thing would look like. Like that's what I want to do. And so I took all of this and I went from the burlap sack, and then I put everything on this blue not wallpaper, blueprint schematic. And I made it all look like this super advanced, in-depth schematics. And that became the favorite piece I ever did. Another quick example would be I took Da Vinci. And the whole analogy or example I just gave was like 30 minutes. I'll give this one in like 30 seconds. I took Da Vinci and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And so I ended up just taking Da Vinci and like copying, pasting them, like the Vitruvian Man, to where the arms are, all the fingertips are touching each other. And they're at an angle. So it was kind of like the monkey, the monkeys that like the plastic things that like clip to each other. I ended up doing them in this weird circle, and it created like an eye, and then I put like DNA strands behind it. But I didn't know what it was when I was starting out. I was just cutting out Vitruvian Man from I guess a scanning of Da Vinci's notebook. But that led to probably my second favorite thing I ever made was like the Vitruvian Man, and it's just like this psychedelic shit. Another one I did was like with a pharaoh. I just cut out King Tut's face, and you can tell how creative I am when I really don't know what to do. I just start copying and pasting it, and it turned into this weird symmetrical thing of it just looked like one solid gold piece. And then I kind of kept just extrapolating it. And then I started overlaying like different colors and negatives. So I got those weird kind of like bright like blues and oranges, like when you take an image and you get the negative of it where all the colors are inversed, like the sky is black and your skin's blue. And it started to turn into this really weird psychedelic shit. The point of that is like going down the hill or going downhill on the mountain. You kind of feel this thread pulling at you, and you're like, let's go that way. I don't know where it's going to go, but I feel like I should be going this way. And that's what it was. So in conclusion, that's kind of what these solo rants are. And that's what this solo rant was. Is we started out talking about, people running for Senate. Actually, we started out with Crowder, which moved to nuclear bombs and cellular biology. And in a weird meta way, by describing the process in which I sort of followed the invisible string in the art making process, I ended up doing a podcast that developed into something I didn't see coming. It was what a beautiful, like an infinity mirror, what a beautiful reflection of itself. But so I'm gonna try to start doing solo rants once a week, because although sometimes I go in and I have the image in my mind and I go, "This is what we're talking about today." It's a fun odyssey of self discovery when you have no idea what you're going to talk about and you just start yapping, which clearly I have no problem doing. But yeah. And like Photoshop, sometimes you go down the whole thing and you create it, you get to the end and you go, "This is fucking shit." That's bound to happen too if it didn't happen today. So, hey, it's the way the cookie crumbles. Take care, everybody. God bless America. Stay safe.